September 11th, 2001. A date that changed everything. 4 planes hijacked, nearly 3,000 people dead, the World Trade Center collapsed, the Pentagon burning, and a nation asking one terrible question. How did this happen? The answer is more disturbing than the attack itself, because the truth is, it didn't have to happen. The intelligence was there. The warnings were there. The hijackers were identified. But the system failed, not in one place, not in one agency, but everywhere, all at once. This is the story of how America's most sophisticated intelligence apparatus, with a budget of billions of dollars, missed the most devastating terrorist attack in its history. Not because the information didn't exist, but because no one connected the dots. Let's start with what they knew. In December 1998, 3 years before the attacks, the CIA's Counterterrorism Center reported directly to President Clinton that al-Qaeda was preparing attacks inside the United States. The report specifically mentioned the possibility of hijacking aircraft. 1998, 3 years of warning. In January 2000, CIA operatives monitored an al-Qaeda meeting in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. They photographed the participants. They identified them. Among those men were 2 Saudi nationals, Khalid al-Mihdar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. The CIA discovered that al-Mihdar possessed a multiple entry visa to the United States. They knew his name. They knew his face. They knew he could enter America whenever he wanted. And then they did nothing. Al-Mihdar used that visa to enter the United States. He obtained a California driver's license. He took flying lessons. He lived openly under his own name. For 20 months, he moved freely through American society. The CIA knew he was a terrorist. They knew he was in America. And they told no one. It wasn't until August 23rd, 2001, 19 days before the attacks, that the CIA finally shared this information with the FBI. 19 days. By then, it was far too late. On September 11th, Khalid al-Mihdar boarded American Airlines Flight 77 and flew it into the Pentagon. But the CIA wasn't alone in its failure. The FBI had its own catastrophic blind spots. In July 2001, an FBI agent named Kenneth Williams sent a memo from the Phoenix field office to FBI headquarters. The memo warned that individuals connected to al-Qaeda were attending flight schools in Arizona. He demanded immediate investigation. The memo became known as the Phoenix Memo. It was ignored. 1 month later, in August 2001, FBI agents in Minnesota arrested a French-Moroccan man named Zacharias Moussaoui. He had enrolled in flight school, but showed no interest in learning how to take off or land. He only wanted to learn how to steer a plane in mid-flight. The local agents were alarmed. They requested permission to search his laptop. FBI headquarters denied the request. They said there wasn't enough evidence. After September 11th, investigators opened that laptop. Inside were details connecting Moussaoui directly to the September 11th plot. The information that could have stopped everything was sitting in an evidence locker while the attacks were being finalized. The warnings kept coming, and they kept being ignored. In the spring of 2001, intelligence chatter about an imminent attack reached unprecedented levels. British intelligence officials held an emergency joint summit with their American counterparts in June. The primary topic: a major terrorist event was coming. One British official later described the meeting as routine that turned into something very much not routine. There was an increase in intercepted communications, an increase in threat indicators. Everything pointed to something big. In July 2001, the CIA's director George Tenet and counterterrorism chief Cofer Black met with National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice. They presented communications intercepts and top-secret intelligence showing that al-Qaeda would soon attack the United States. Rice listened, but she was unconvinced. She had other priorities. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld questioned whether the intelligence was a deception designed to test how America would respond. On August 6, 2001, President Bush received his daily intelligence briefing. The title of that briefing was clear and direct: Bin Laden determined to strike in U.S. The memo warned that bin Laden was planning to exploit operatives already inside America to mount a terrorist strike. It noted FBI information indicating patterns of suspicious activity consistent with preparations for hijackings or other types of attacks. 5 weeks later, the towers fell. After the attacks, Condoleezza Rice defended herself before the 9/11 Commission. She stated the briefing was not prompted by specific threat information and did not raise the possibility that terrorists might use airplanes as missiles, but the Commission found otherwise. The intelligence had been there. Specific, detailed, actionable. So why didn't anyone act? The 9/11 Commission spent 2.5 years investigating. They interviewed over 1,200 people in 10 countries. They reviewed more than 2.5 million pages of documents. Their final report, released in July 2004, was devastating. The Commission identified what they called a failure of imagination. Intelligence agencies were still operating with a Cold War mindset. They were designed to track nation-states with missiles and armies, not stateless terrorist networks with box cutters and commercial airlines. The threat of terrorists using planes as weapons had been considered, but only as a theoretical possibility involving explosives or weapons of mass destruction. No one imagined hijackers would simply fly passenger jets into buildings. But imagination wasn't the only failure. There was also a catastrophic breakdown in information sharing. The CIA and FBI operated in separate worlds. The CIA gathered intelligence outside the United States. The FBI handled threats inside the country. But they didn't talk to each other. Not effectively. Not urgently. When the CIA tracked al-Mihdar and al-Hazmi internationally, they should have immediately notified the FBI once those men entered the United States. They didn't. The handoff never happened. 2 known terrorists lived openly in America for over a year, and the agency responsible for domestic security had no idea they existed. This wasn't bureaucratic inefficiency. It was institutional culture. The CIA viewed watchlisting terrorists as someone else's job. In their DNA was secrecy, compartmentalization, a reluctance to share information even with other American agencies. The Commission later concluded that the CIA deliberately withheld information, not through carelessness, but purposefully. The FBI had its own problems. On September 11th, only 6% of FBI agents were assigned to counterterrorism. The Bureau prioritized criminal investigations over intelligence gathering. It valued field agents who made arrests over analysts who connected dots. It had no centralized database. Information was scattered across field offices, with no way to link patterns or identify threats. Meanwhile, the National Security Agency was collecting massive amounts of communications data, but the NSA operated on a reactive model. It waited to be asked for information. If someone had requested data on the names discovered in Malaysia, the NSA could have provided it immediately. Their databases contained earlier communications involving these same individuals. Some had been reported, some had not, but all of it was accessible. No one thought to ask. Beyond the intelligence community, there were failures everywhere. The State Department issued visas to several hijackers despite obvious irregularities in their applications and passports. Airport security, run by private contractors, was barely functional. On September 11th, hijackers passed through checkpoints with box cutters and knives. Some were selected for additional screening, but the screening focused on checked baggage, not carry-on items or the individuals themselves. Immigration controls were porous. Even when Musawi was arrested on immigration violations, no one connected his flight school enrollment to the Phoenix memo warning about al-Qaeda operatives doing exactly that. The dots were there, scattered across different agencies, different databases, different desks, but no system existed to bring them together. Perhaps most tragically, there were individuals who tried to sound the alarm. FBI agent John O'Neill spent years tracking al-Qaeda. He understood the threat better than almost anyone in government. He warned repeatedly that a major attack was coming, but his investigations were undermined by the same lack of information sharing that plagued the entire system. In August 2001, frustrated by bureaucratic obstacles, O'Neill retired from the FBI. He took a job as head of security at the World Trade Center. He died there on his second week of work. After September 11th, the failures became undeniable. Congress passed the Homeland Security Act, creating the Department of Homeland Security by combining 22 agencies. The Intelligence Reform Act created the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to coordinate the CIA, FBI, and 14 other agencies that previously operated independently. The National Counterterrorism Center was established to ensure information sharing. But were these reforms enough? In the years since, intelligence officials have claimed success. No attack on the scale of September 11th has occurred on American soil. But intelligence failures continue. The Arab Spring, the rise of ISIS, the fall of Kabul, each represented a failure to predict, to understand, to connect information that existed. The lesson of September 11th isn't that intelligence gathering failed. America was gathering plenty of intelligence. The lesson is that collecting information means nothing if that information never reaches the people who can act on it. It means nothing if agencies guard their secrets from each other more carefully than they guard against enemies. It means nothing if the system is designed to wait for perfect certainty before taking action. In the end, 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudi citizens. They entered the United States legally. They trained at American flight schools. They bought tickets with credit cards. They boarded planes at major airports. They left a trail of evidence across multiple agencies, multiple databases, multiple desks, and nobody stopped them. Not because the information didn't exist, but because in the vast machinery of American intelligence, with its billions of dollars and thousands of employees and millions of intercepts, nobody put the pieces together until it was too late. That's how the CIA missed September 11th. That's how everyone missed September 11th. The dots were there. Someone just needed to connect them.